That big red button says record.
So that means we're recording.
I mean, I guess so.
Yeah. Look what happens when Michael's not here.
Listen,
It all
doesn't mean
apart.
that we can't figure it out ourselves.
That's right.
Do you want to introduce this?
We might be recording.
Yeah.
Hi.
What are we doing?
I'm Nancy Rommelmann. I'm here with Matt Welch at Paloma Media Studios. It's a Paloma Media production. Sunday night,
Yeah.
talking to you about some media stuff.
Yeah.
Been kicking around.
We built this studio. Nancy mostly built the studio. Moynihan helped. I did something.
Oh, you bought all this
I
beautiful
bought the
equipment.
stuff. That counts
Yeah.
for something. And we've been starting to record from here. And as part of it, and part of building out Paloma Media, which is a conspiracy that you can find on Twitter and YouTube and
Instagram
and TikTok. Let's not forget TikTok.
That's right.
I don't know if you saw my second video on TikTok.
Oh, I haven't.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Is
it
not
equally humiliating?
Yeah, sadly, my oldest daughter refused to allow herself to be in the end of it, like the first one. Like I wanted to get a whole theme going of her being like horrified by me, because that's the whole point of it.
That's the whole point of this TikTok.
But she is the editor of that site, so she has the dictatorial power. I'm trying to train her.
I just think we should have TikToks of her.
Well, I mean, yes. But then it might undermine
Our brand.
a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Old bad person brand.
Okay.
But anyways, so Nancy and I are trying to figure out how the equipment, which is literally, it looks like that Beep Boop Simon game. Was that what it was called? Remember the thing with like the 4 primary colors and it does a little pattern?
it looks like a 1970s game show. Like, come on down. You've got all these like primary squares that'll start flashing. It's actually really cute.
Yeah, it's a handsome device. There's
Yes.
no Gene Rayburn with like a
Damn it.
13-foot microphone.
Anyway, we're here. We're here winging it on a Sunday night for you guys. We've built this studio so we could put out some hopefully interesting, fun, Jackie-assy and content for you. So
And so we're just seeing whether we can use the equipment, and in the process, talk about a story that pissed us both off.
2 stories. Anyway.
You tell it.
Well, no, you tell it, then I'll get on to the second story.
Okay. If there's even time for the second story. So this thing came across on, was it Friday nights or afternoon, and it just seemed bizarre to me. I think I tweeted it out at the time of like, something about this smells funny. And it was a story that was first reported in the Daily Beast by Maxwell Tanney, T-A-N-I, and Lachlan something or other. And it was called headlined, Star New York Times reporter accused of using N-word, making other racist comments. So accused, right? This is important. It'll soon become clear that like looking for the racist comment is this interesting thing that none of the journalists who have talked about this story yet have mentioned, except for Nancy on her Substack. Here's the subhead. The paper's top COVID reporter joined a group of students on a trip to Peru in 2019. Participants alleged he repeatedly made racist comments. So this was picked up. The Daily Beast broke this story, and then it immediately occasioned a statement from New York Times editor-in-chief Dean Baquet, in which a statement that he released to the Daily Beast and then released it internally to the New York Times, saying that when he first heard about Donald McNeil is the name of the reporter. And this reporter, maybe I'll back up a tiny bit. So this is the main pandemic coronavirus science and health and tech reporter for the New York Times. He's been working there at the New York Times since I was 5 years old.
Yeah, he joined the paper in 1976.
Four.
Was it 4?
It was 4.
Okay.
So he's been there forever, and he has been doing work that has received a lot of plaudits about coronavirus. There's also plenty of critics, including plenty of anti-lockdown critics who don't like the way that he has comported himself on occasion. That's absolutely neither here nor there for the purposes of this conversation. Here's a guy who in 2 of the previous 3 days before this Daily Beast story ran. And I think that is likely not an accident. And I will hedge all of my likelies and supposedlies because there's such an amazing lack of reporting, or a lack of, hey, this is why we're writing this story now. This is why we heard about this story now within this story. So you have a guy who has been having a pretty good run for the Times on COVID, and for 2 of the previous 3 days or 4 days before this Daily Beast story ran late last week, he was on The Daily, which is the New York Times daily podcast, which is among the most popular podcasts in the world.
I'd like to also just interject that he's been coming on The Daily, basically since COVID started. Not all the time, but they'll have him in. And, Michael Barbara's like, hey, let's check in. What are you doing? Well, I'm still not going outside. Here's what I know. And he's very personable. He talks about not being able to see his grandchild. I mean, he's a smart science guy, but he's sort of a personable guy. In terms of the politics of people not liking him, I don't follow that as much as Matt does, but I guess he's pretty pro-lockdown. But that is obviously, if we're having people grumbling about him and 2019, a trip that he took, and they're accusing him of being a racist, that's not why these complaints are surfacing now about him. It's not anti-lockdown people that are complaining about him.
Right. So it's reasonable to presume, unless the Daily Beast media reporters have a lot of deep sources inside the student travel industry. I'm guessing that's probably a no. It's just a supposition. And again, you don't know because they don't say this story came to us because these people were mad about a thing.
So you have to preface that by saying, when McNeil is accused of using the N-word or being a racist, in 2019, he's one of the people that are on a tour. It's one of these like New York Times trips. You can see them. They cost $5,500 a person to go. And it's like students and some of their parents. And he was joining them in Peru. It's one of these things like you have an expert along with you. And on one of these trips in Peru, he is accused in the Daily Beast story of saying something racist. Now, what he apparently said was in the context of quoting something. We don't know if it was a song, a movie, a television show, but apparently that doesn't matter, right, Matt? This doesn't matter at this point.
So the exact, and like you're piecing this together chronologically. According to multiple parents of students on the trip who spoke with the Daily Beast, along with documents shared with the Times and reviewed by the Beast, that's interesting. Many participants of the students, 6 out of at least 26, relate a series of troubling accusations to the paper. McNeil repeatedly made racist and sexist remarks throughout the trip, including, according to 2 complaints, using the N-word. Okay, so bunch of racist statements. He used the N-word. Oh my God, this has to be terrible. Let's hear more about this. Editor-in-Chief Dean Baquet, who I might get into my history of not having a lot of respect for at some point throughout the next few minutes, released a statement, which is kind of amazing to me, to be honest with you. So he released it publicly and then the one internally. By now, you've read the account of a trip that Donald McNeil made with a group of students in 2019. This is an internal to New York Times statement. Now, keep in mind, so the text of the Daily Beast story says that McNeil was disciplined internally for his remarks and allowed to continue reporting. And that after an initial look at it from his boss, Dean Baquet, he said that we found, we conducted a thorough investigation and disciplined Donald for statements and language that had been inappropriate and inconsistent with our values. We found he had used bad judgment by repeating a racist slur in the context of a conversation about racist language. So what do you think, lacking a quote, what does that tell you what does that look like to you, Nancy?
Well, it tells me obviously they're being as opaque as they possibly can, and I don't know. I mean, if you were being generous to McNeil, you could say, well, they're being opaque to sort of protect him. But I don't think that's what's happening here. I think what's happening here is they're being opaque in order to make something that, probably was him quoting from, I don't know, a book, a movie, a song, we don't know, to sort of err on the side of making him look sort of guilty, but we're going to keep him. But I'm going to ask you a question, Matt, and you listeners. So something happens to you, like you're walking down the street, you get hit on the head with a brick, and the cops come up to you and they're like, well, what happened? It's like, I got hit on the head with a brick. You try to be as specific as possible because you feel pretty confident that you were walking down the street and were hit in the head with a brick. Okay, you go ahead and read this Daily Beast story. There is nothing from any of these students and their parents. And by the way, it's 6 out of 26 students or their parents. It's not and their parents.
Yes.
So it's a smaller number, but the way they kind of say.
And 2 of those 6 said that he used the N-word, and Dean Baquet said that it did not appear to me that his intentions were hateful or malicious. So in what context do you use the N-word in a way that is not hateful or malicious, but that is also in the context of a conversation about racist language?
Well, we don't know. And why don't we know? Because none of these students or their parents have bothered to say, oh, by the way, also none of them have, will be revealed, right? So you have people just anonymously saying this person said something. That's all you know, guys.
There have been several cases in academia and in the corporate America over the last 12 to 18 months where people used, I believe the N-word is usually the most radioactive one. What was the one? It was was it Netflix? I think it was Netflix, and I apologize if I'm getting the entertainment company wrong, but I think it was. Some leader was up there talking, and they were having a discussion about the need to kind of move on. And it might have been the N-word, it might have been something homophobic, but they're saying, yeah, it's really important as you do this to not use words like X. That person was fired. Yeah,
because we are now at the point you're not even allowed to say any word, or maybe even like look at any word without you being guilty of being racist. And let me just say, in that Daily Beast piece, it starts out making these accusations, and by the time you're at the 2/3 marks of the piece, it's like saying, well, basically Donald McNeil, a known racist.
It says it's the McNeil's racist remarks have come to light during a period of content. What racist remarks?
What racist remarks? We don't know, and you know why? Okay, so here's something I wrote about on my Substack. It's like, okay, so you have to think for a second. You've got kids here. They're paying $5,500 a month to go on this trip with their parents. They are willing to be cloaked in anonymity and to make these accusations. And guess what? There's just no consequences for them whatsoever if they do this, right? Right? Well, because these are people that are not going to have consequences if they're going to be going on these trips. What are they getting out of this? What are they getting out of this particular campaign? Like 15 minutes of being a hero?
Well, the question is, it's important to point out that the students were upset and the parents were upset, or some combination thereof. Like one quote is, he was a racist, he used the N-word, said horrible things about black teenagers, and said white supremacy doesn't exist. I can imagine that being a response. I'm the parent of a 12-year-old who calls her mom homophobic when she's not, because she's being raised as a woke 12-year-old and is being a 12-year-old in Brooklyn. But it's possible that it's something. But those teenagers were made, their concerns, they were apologized to by the New York Times in 2019. We are only hearing about this now because someone decided within the New York Times, I will bet money to anybody, to Maxwell Tanney, I will bet you money that we are hearing about this now because someone internal to the New York Times was appalled that Donald McNeil was being feted by a controversial, now within the Times podcast, The Daily, which is seen as a platform within the platform, right? It's the most popular news podcast in the world, or in the United States. And who gets to be on there is seen as this really important, like, plum. And again, 2 of the 4 days before this thing came out, McNeil was on just, here's the state of the coronavirus. And he also interviewed Dr. Anthony Fauci in it was a very good and wide-ranging interview. And the Daily has been under a lot of focus for a lot of reasons, some of which are complicated to get into, many of which I think are completely trumped up, but other people disagree. Neither here nor there, but they're under heightened focus. So at a time when they're under heightened focus, especially with sort of whispers and whiffs of possible sexism, misogyny, I don't know if there's been prior accusations of racism, but probably because it's the New York Times at this point. They see Donald McNeil and they know that this thing happened in 2019 and they can't deal with it.
Look, it's how I have this from someone inside the Times who obviously I'm not going to name. This person's like, well, what else happens in January, Nancy? It's Pulitzer season, and he's there's talk of him being up for a Pulitzer, or maybe he's up for a Pulitzer. I don't know. And it's like, you know what? People don't like that. They don't like the fact that someone else that maybe they'd have the sunshine if he didn't. So the internal chatter. From what I've had in the New York Times, and this is a quote, is just incredibly mean. And people want him gone, including you've got people at other newspapers. I don't know if I should name this person who I'm constantly kind of bringing up, who are saying, how dare Donald McNeil get promoted? How dare this white dude get promoted? He's been there since 1974. Like, I don't even know what to say here. It's like, when is someone allowed to matriculate in their career?
There were, generously speaking, or modestly speaking, I should say, at least a dozen salaried journalists or people who work in the media industry who responded to these series of news. Again, articles that none of them, not the New York Times follow-on coverage, which I'm going to get to in a second, not the Washington Post's follow-on coverage, none of it ever mentioned what he said and what the context was.
No, and that's what I would like to also repeat. I have seen journalists come out and say, wow, I am so proud of those journalists at the Daily Beast for their very brave and spectacular reporting. Let me tell you something. There's no reporting in the Daily Beast article. They did kind of scour out some people that were willing to not go on the record and be completely like both super aggrieved and mealy-mouthed at the same time, and then basically quote from whatever the New York Times released, whatever their press release or internal documents were. There's no reporting here. You have not helped anything, and you have certainly not done anything brave. What have they done that's brave, Matt Welch?
Who?
What? There's no bravery here. There is, I think, probably some professional jealousy inside the Times. Guess what, guys? I don't know what Don McNeil said, and neither do you. And you can go and read every single report that's online, and you're still not going to know. Don't you think if someone wants to be a super brave and courageous reporter, that they should go and actually find out, like make these people, if you're going to spend your time and your readers' bandwidth, then come out and tell us what this person supposedly said and strengthen your argument.
So Dean Baquet, the editor-in-chief's message internally was, and this makes my blood boil because I feel like it's him trying to straddle the line constantly, which he's always doing. He's always calibrating, like, how much can I give in to the kind of younger staffers who are always getting the pitchforks and the tiki torches in their own way out for the old racist crust bags, and how much do we don't. So he says, when I first heard the story, I was outraged and expected I would fire him. Is that what you say as a boss?
Yeah.
When I first heard something, I expected that I would fire someone before I've even judged this. This is just him trying to play nice with people, trying to explain away why he didn't fire someone. And then his next language, which I'm going to basically repeat, is Authorized Investigation included his remarks were offensive, and that he showed extremely poor judgment, but that it did not appear to me that his intentions were hateful or malicious. Okay, so again, this if you didn't have intention, a malicious or hateful intent, and you use the N-word in context of talking about racist language, here's my question to you. did you use a racist slur? If I say, when I was growing up in Long Beach, California, people called each other faggot, did I just use a homophobic slur? Yes or no? I mean, actually, I'm not being a bully about this. I want to know the answer to that question from your point of view, Nancy, because maybe some people listening have a different point of view than I do.
Well, from my point of view, you did not. From my point of view, you're telling me something that happened. I can say, when I was with my ex, a Native American guy who grew up around, he grew up very natives and blacks, and they used to say, hey, N-word, please. Like, that was what they said. Like, that's how they spoke, right? Okay, so if I say that to you, that's how they spoke, am I using a racist slur? Well, it's in the eye of the beholder or the ear of the hearer. And right now, I think that it seems to be that there's some reward if you take offense at that. If you take offense at that, you can be on the side of the people that feel that they're making a better world if you're offended by that. And that is a lot of the people inside of the New York Times, and it's a lot of the 15-year-olds whose parents pay $5,500 for them to go on a trip. And all of a sudden, it's like, wow, can you imagine you're 15 on a trip and there's a guy who's 60 years old and you're hanging out with him and maybe he's you're super glad he's there because that's why you went on the damn trip, right? Because this guy was going to give you his expertise. And maybe they were offended at the moment. I don't know. I wasn't there. Maybe they weren't.
Maybe he's grumpy and kind of off-putting. I've met that guy.
Or maybe it's like 2 years later, there's like a little bit of a whisper campaign and it's like, yeah, maybe that was not okay. Maybe he was quoting that song and, whoa, maybe I should have been seriously offended. Wait, the New York Times is going to pay attention to me. The Daily Beast is going to want me to talk to them. And I'm not going to pay. It's not going to hurt me to do this.
My strong supposition is that no students were talking to the Daily Beast. It's
their parents. It's their Brooklyn parents.
No, it's like I think they got copy of the file. To talk about, because he talked about the I believe strongly that this is an internal leak from the internal personnel leak from the New York Times going after it. So and they get the quotes of people who were mad and who sent mails contemporaneously and were upset. I didn't see any quotes from someone saying, you know what, after 18 months, I've really thought about this, and I feel like that apology wasn't enough. If that was a thing, we would have read it in the story. It wasn't a thing. That's not part of what was on offer, right? So again, guy uses, according to the reporting that we know, uses the N-word twice, or according to two different students, he used the N-word at least once in the context of talking about racist language. Right. And also, after a thorough investigation, according to Deep McKay, his boss, there was no hateful or malicious intent. Right. So now Eric Wempel from the Washington Post, the media writer there. Ooh, I heard a seethe.
Oh, well.
An intake of a gritted teeth breath.
You and I already messaged about this. Wempel, I don't know when you started working there, but there was a time when I thought, the guy had some pretty interesting things to say. Hold that thought. Matt, keep talking.
We're going to hit pause. No, we're not. I'm going to keep walking through because Nancy is walking. This studio is a kind of adjunct wing of Nancy's apartment. It shares a vestibule. You turn left, you go into her apartment. You turn right, you come into the Paloma Media studios, which Fifth Column uses promiscuously. In fact, we'll use later on tonight. So there might be some traffic, and we're going to do some little haircuttery in a little bit here.
That's right.
Hopefully that some of you will have already consumed by the time you get around to this. All right. Eric Wempel, media reporter, Washington Post for a long time. I used to value his work a lot. I value it a lot less these days. He strikes me as very scoldy as much as anything else. And in his piece, he used a paragraph, which was interesting choice of words. McNeil sounded defiant when reached for comment by the Post on Thursday afternoon. Don't believe everything you read, he said in an email with no further elaboration. And then on Twitter, Eric Wempel is like, you know what? We really need to hear from Donald McNeil himself, which I believe although I would like to hear from Donald McNeil. In fact, I emailed him and I hope to be in contact with him. We don't need, that's not showing a lot of sophistication about how personnel matters happen at newspapers in 2021. Donald McNeil needs to probably, to save his job right now, is to shut the front door, to shut the hell up, while the paper, I think, is going to be having some large internal meetings on Monday, agonizing over why did we let this terrible racist be platformed. This is, again, by journalists who, as far as we know, don't know anything about what he said.
I'll echo Matt. When Wempel, when I started reading him a couple of years ago, I thought he had some interesting things to say. He was kind of looking at chunky issues like we are. But in the past couple of years, at least the ones I followed of him, I'm completely disabused of enjoying his coverage. And what he said the other day was, in a sense, like we really just need to hear from Donald McNeil himself. And I'm sorry, what this is the little piece of cheese in the trap. It's like, come on, Don, come to the table and just like tell us what you said. And once you're there, once you've taken that cheese, it's like, see, he knows he's guilty. And then everybody else goes in and just tears him apart. From my point of view, you say nothing. Now, I'm going to repeat what I said, and I'm going to send people to my Substack because I talked about this a little more over there. He might have said something terrible. Do we know? No, we don't know, because no one has bothered to report that. So why do you go and start defending yourself against something you didn't say? And I'm pretty sure from the way this smells, and you were absolutely right on Thursday night to say this smells fishy, I feel pretty certain he probably didn't say anything except something in context. Like if I was quoting a song from you that was super dirty or kind of like seemed super racist if I was quoting it. That's probably what happened. And if I were Don McNeil and if I were listening to me, I'd say, dude, keep your head down, do your work. Because you know what? These campaigns need calories. They need something to suck off of. And just keep your head down, do your work. They'll go off and find the next person that they can get some mileage off of.
The thing that probably outrages me the most, besides idiot journalists acting like idiots on Twitter about this, but that you can be expected by now for them to just pile on rather than ask questions. But the New York Times ran their own story on this. So keeping in mind that they already engaged in an internal disciplinary process for someone last year. No, not even last year. We're 2021. It's 2019. So a year and a half ago or whatever. This is news only because the Daily Beast has reported it for the most part. And this is the headline of the New York Times' own story about this incident. New York Times reporter used racial slur with student group. Used racial slur. Okay, again, if I am quoting the Guns N' Roses song "One in a Million" as an example of the type of popular culture that you could consume in the late 1980s that include racist sentiment, and I wouldn't probably do that because I kind of love that song. Maybe that says something about me. But you got N words, you got F words, you got lots of details. If I was quoting that in service of that context, would I be using, or is that how we describe what I did? I'm not sure. They put it in a headline, and again, this is the paper that actually knows the story. And we don't know. They don't talk about in their own story what he said. They conducted a thorough investigation, according to Dean Baquet, and we've got no evidence of that thorough investigation in the news article in the newspaper that conducted the thorough investigation. What the fuck are you even doing?
Okay, I'm gonna turn this around and now be like nice and tender, Nancy. Okay. So, students, young people with young brains hungry for stuff. Yes, I know the culture feeds you things and tells you should be afraid of things and you should oh my God, I should be offended. But you know what? Mostly young people aren't. Young people are pretty badass. They got a billion hormones going on. They're curious about the world. They want to eat it up. And yeah, people tell you to be scared of things. Don't be scared of things. Go, be interested in things, right? So you're on some trip. You're in Peru. Whoa, God, freaking exotic, right? And you're with some dude who's 60, he's an old dude, but he's interesting probably, right? He's interesting because he's been reporting for a long time. And yeah, you could read you from a textbook or a math book, or he could be like, oh, now we're going to study this lizard. No. Or he could like sit with you in a place like maybe you even have a beer and you're only 16. Who the hell knows? I wasn't there. But he also starts, maybe he's like trying to talk to you in a way that maybe you're going to understand. Like maybe he's like a super old dude. No,
oh, no.
I'm telling you, but he might be.
He's saying hello.
He might be.
Hello, fellow kids.
Yeah, hello, fellow kids. And he's maybe he's either A, being a dork, right? He's like, oh, I thought they might think I was cool if I was like doing something from, I don't know, I'm going to say LL Cool J, tell you how old I am, right? But, or maybe it's just like he likes to mix it up the way he talks to you. Or maybe somebody in the crew or the group said something and he riffed off it. It was like, oh, wait, I can kind of get that. Guys, it's a big world. Like, listen to the ways that we can address the world. Don't take offense if he wasn't meaning to be offensive. Like, again, I wasn't there. I don't know if he said something offensive. And guess what? Neither do you. Because no one has done the reporting to do that. And be careful, because you've got people that are making a career out of this sort of like, I mean, the idea that someone at the New York Times could feed an internal memo that might bring down one of their more successful colleagues is really bad. This is really not the way you want to be.
It's a level of reporting that I would, Felicia Sumnes of the Washington Post.
Oh, don't get me started. Oh, my God.
No, she was like, she tweeted out, thanks. While the New York Times may be in the spotlight now, racism and sexism are problems at every single news outlet, especially the Fifth Column, as we all know. Thank you to the brave folks like Maxwell Tanney, et cetera, and others who are revealing the extent of these problems rather than denying or minimizing them. Did they reveal the extent of the problem in that piece? Are they brave for what they did? The brave thing to do, and that is never done or very rarely done in journalism, is as follows: not just actually getting the smoking gun at the heart of the story, right? That makes sense. Which they didn't in this case, but also to indicate, why did you get this story? Why now? Who decided that this was an important thing to talk about right now? You don't see that a lot in journalism because they don't want to tarnish their product with the perhaps less than savory motives of some of the people who are feeding them information.
Really, because of course it's not really a story, is it? No, not really. It's not really a story that in 2019 somebody might have said something that was untoward. Okay, I mean, Sonmez, I'm sorry, I messaged you and Michael Moynihan and Camille earlier in the week saying, when Marty Barron announced his retirement from the Washington Post, I was like, oh, well, let's see how Sonmez inserts herself into the story. And she didn't. Shocker. Well, of course she did. She found a way to bring some sunshine onto herself from somebody else's misery. This is, I'm sorry, to my mind, what this woman seems to specialize in.
She's a national political reporter and does fine national political reporting work, and really bad Twitter work.
I have written about her. I can send people to my Substack again, or you can read a piece I wrote for Tablet last year about her. But in any case, if I could say what would be helpful to this in this moment? I mean, you already messaged Don McNeil, who I don't know, by the way. I'm calling him Don.
He doesn't like that. Donald.
Yeah. It's like maybe there could be somebody without this sort of agenda or axe to grind or whatever you want to call it that said, I mean, doesn't really seem like much of a story to me, but maybe it is. Do you want to tell me the deal? I certainly, invite that.
And keep in mind, his one public comment is, don't believe everything you read.
That's right.
So that's suggesting that maybe the overwhelming tenor of this, according to him, is painting a false picture. And he might be lying. He might be trying to plant that information. But shouldn't that give you pause if you are a journalist on Twitter saying stuff like, I can't believe that the New York Times refuses to fire racists? And I've read a lot. I've read Roland Martin had one of those too. A bunch of people out there shaking their damn heads, including people internal to the New York Times who are speechless about this turn of events. Shouldn't you, as a journalist, want to, I don't know, be a little bit worried that what you are saying and intimating and spreading might be wrong?
Shouldn't you, as I wrote this earlier, it's like I feel obviously as a journalist it's important to write you the truth as best as I find it. I think that's my responsibility. It's your responsibility to be truthful to your to the people you interview and to the subject you're writing about. It's important for your publication, but it's important to the reader. Like you, the reader, really, really deserve to know as the most unvarnished truth that I can find for you. And that is not what you've been given about this story. You've been given sort of defensive posturing, mealy-mouthed stuff from the New York Times. You don't know the etiology of this story, which apparently, if Matt is correct, and I think he probably is some sort of like leaked internal stuff.
Guessing.
But it could, how did they get this story from 2019? Like what? It wasn't like there was a fire down the street and they reported it. This is like something now, and it is a public destruction of someone who is successful. And this is a fire that certain journalists and certain parts of consumers love to stand around and warm themselves for a moment till they go on, and then that fire dies down. Oh, you need another one. As you know, there were 2 last week. There'll be 2 more next week. I invite the people that other people are trying to set on fire to this table because we really don't want to do that. We want to pour some nice, cool cocktails here and speak the unvarnished truth as well as we can.
Amen. All right, let's just close it.
Yeah,
right? What do we call this podcast, by the way?
I don't know. What do we call this? Paloma Media Presents. We don't have a name yet, guys. Give us some suggestions.
Paloma Pod.
We'll have a drink and talk about it.
Anyways, we'll see if this recorded. Hopefully it did. And God bless the United States of America.
Yeah, thanks.